Something very big is happening in Africa and no one is talking about it. Outside, all you see here is just a few. You will see seaports, roads, ships, and infrastructure. But if you pay attention, you will realize that not just infrastructure is being built here, but preparations are being made to do something very big with planning. China is quietly laying the foundation of its military strength here, from Djibouti on the eastern coast to Equatorial Guinea on the western side, and from the warm waters of Tanzania to Angola's.
From deep sea ports to everywhere, bases are being established, new partnerships are being formed, and China is planting its flag. But the question is, why is China doing all this? Is it just to protect its trade, or is there a bigger purpose behind it? In the next few minutes, I will explain to you step by step that China's moves in Africa do not only affect Africa.
Rather, it is going to impact the entire world. China's strategy is aimed at the world's trade routes and military power.
Will completely change it. What is happening in Africa today will decide who will control the world's seas and economy tomorrow. Stay. All of this began with Djibouti, a small country near the Horn of Africa that is hard to find on a map, but its importance in world geopolitics is very high. In 2017, China established its first military base here. Near this military base is the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, one of the most important in the world. Choke point. Every day, 10% of the world's trade passes through here, including oil, gas, and industrial goods. This trade comes from the Indian Ocean through this strait into the Red Sea, and then crosses the Suez Canal to reach Europe. So whoever controls this choke point can control the world's trade. China's base in Djibouti is not small. This is a very big setup. Satellite images reveal that there are bunkers, underground facilities. It is a deep water port where even aircraft carriers can be stationed. You will also see Chinese soldiers here, which means the base is fully operational. But the most interesting thing is that this Chinese base is among the American, French, and Japanese bases, very close by. So basically, Chinese, American, French, and Japanese military forces are located in the same area just a few kilometers apart. And that's why Djibouti has become a high-tension zone. The situation here is as if a Cold War is underway and each country is quietly observing the other.
But Djibouti is just the beginning. China is now focusing thousands of kilometers away on the western side, on Equatorial Guinea. It is on the Atlantic coast.
There is a small country where China is implementing its military expansion strategy. Just as China gained a grip on the Indian Ocean because of Djibouti, similarly, because of Guinea, it could gain entry into the Atlantic Ocean. And here, the best place for a Chinese military base is Bata. This is a port city that seems like a shipping hub at first glance. But according to a lot of classified information, China plans to convert it into a military base. However, this thing is not so. Why is it important? In reality, so far, China's naval presence is only in the Pacific and Indian Sea, limited to the ocean, meaning those areas that are close to its borders. But if China establishes a naval base in Bata, it will get direct access to the Atlantic Ocean. The ocean, which until now was considered the stronghold of America and its allies. This way, China will get the opportunity to enter the Western Hemisphere, where its navy can not only keep an eye on West Africa, but also extend its reach to South America and even to the coast of the USA. Will be. And these are not just assumptions or theories. According to leaked intelligence reports and American defense assessments, the Chinese military, the Port of Guinea, can use to refuel its warships and supply them with weapons. This is a very significant development because until now, for the Chinese Navy to operate outside Asia, it had to rely on bases that are very far away. But if this base becomes active, the Chinese Navy will get such a forward position that only America had before. And that's why America is very worried, and this entire situation has been declared a national security threat. The reason is that for the first time, another superpower will establish a military base in that region where only America has held sway since World War II. Just think, until a few years ago, China's presence outside its region was not even a military base. And today, China is increasing its military presence around the world. And Equatorial Guinea, for it in the Atlantic Ocean, can become the most important front. If this base becomes operational, then China will not only be challenging America in Asia, but will also be directly standing against America in the Atlantic Ocean. And that's not just a strategy, it's bold geopolitical message because this base will change all the naval dynamics of the Atlantic Ocean, an ocean that the United States has dominated for years. And China's Atlantic ambitions do not stop just with Guinea but also
Gabon's coastline is a little further up, another country rich in natural resources where China openly.
So, they are not building a military base, but what they are doing there is no less than building a base. China is quietly making some secret trade deals and military agreements in Gabon. In April 2023, China officially upgraded its relations with Gabon and named it a comprehensive strategic cooperative partnership. Now, it may just sound like a diplomatic term, but under this guise, China is not only making heavy investments in Gabon, but along with it is also making secret military deals. So far, the government of Gabon has not confirmed the presence of any Chinese military base here. However, many analysts believe that this partnership in the name of trade will very soon transform into security arrangements because it has always been China's strategy to enter a country through economics and then gradually begin to increase its military presence there. And just below Gabon in Angola, China has already demonstrated all of this due to its strategic location and natural resources. Angola is a very important country. China has been Angola's largest trading partner since 2007. It has invested billions in Angola's oil industry, construction projects, and ports. And today, it is not only Angola's largest trading partner, but also the country that provides the most loans and support. The capital of Angola, Luanda, is a hub for Chinese investment. This port has been modernized with Chinese investment, and here's where it gets interesting. This port has a dual-use design. It means that it can handle not only commercial, but also military ships. There are berths and logistics setups here that can support all kinds of naval operations. In normal conditions, this port will handle just trade and cargo. But if there's ever a warlike situation, then China would use this port, can immediately convert it into a military facility, and can support its warships and even submarines from here. So in Gabon and Angola, China might not have proper military bases as of today, but China's presence here gives it many options. And in geopolitics, the one with more options has power, is with them. Through its presence in countries like Djibouti and Guinea, China is weaving a web of its influence. And it's not just about a base or porty, it's not there. This is a continent-wide strategy through which Beijing is going to gain power and dominance in the region where Western powers once ruled. But China is not only making new plans in West Africa or Southern Africa, but now it is also reinforcing those plans, the seeds of which were planted many years ago. The biggest example of this long-term strategy is Tanzania, a country where China, since the time of the Cold War, it has been focused on increasing its influence. In the 60s and 70s, when African countries were gaining independence, China saw an opportunity to develop trust with these countries. The most famous project from that era was the Tanzania-Zambia Railway. A very large railway network was built with China's help, through which Zambia exported its goods to the rest of the world via Tanzania. This was not just aid, but China's first step to increase its influence in Africa. The attempt was a failure, and even today China is following the same strategy. It has the ports of Tanzania, invested very heavily in roads on the energy sector. But among all these, the most important and controversial project was the Bagamoyo port project. The plan was to make Bagamoyo Africa's largest port, with all the construction to be done by Chinese companies. This port was to be built right by the Indian Ocean, north of Dar es Salaam, and it was supposed to have the capacity to easily handle military equipment and even navy warships. However, later the Tanzanian government halted the project, saying there were some terms that could threaten its sovereignty. But despite this, China's interest in this area never ended. Besides Bagamoyo, China also has very strong military cooperation with Tanzania, and the navies of both countries conduct joint military exercises here. China has even built military academies and training centers with its own money. There is a special thing in Tanzania that China cannot get from any other Central African country, and that is the proximity to the Indian Ocean, long coastline. If China wants to increase its naval presence in Eastern Africa, apart from Djibouti, then there is no better option than Tanzania. Through this, China can monitor not only East Africa but also shipping routes from the Gulf of Aden to Southeast Asia. And remember one more thing, China's military strategy is not about making big announcements or loud noises. Instead, it quietly makes deals in the name of infrastructure projects and gradually increases its presence in that country. That's why,
Certainly. Here's the translation. Today, although China does not have an official military base in Tanzania, it has offered the Tanzanian government.
made itself so dependent on them that if they need tomorrow, the government of Tanzania cannot refuse. So on one hand, China is increasing military cooperation with countries like Tanzania in East Africa. And on the other hand, since 2018, it has been eyeing countries like Namibia on the 17th side. This country, located on the southwest coast of Africa, offers China two things that very few African countries can. One is the South Atlantic Ocean's access, and the second is a stable political environment. This country's most important asset is the port of Walvis Bay. Over the last roughly 20 years, China has this port has invested millions of dollars. In fact, in the year 2012, the contract to upgrade this port was given to a Chinese company, and the value of this contract is the contract's value was $60 million. Now, on the surface, this port is made for commercial use, but many analysts say that the port also has a dual design. That means, if needed, this port can be immediately transformed into a naval base, because here there are berths for large ships and an advanced type of logistics setup which is normally found in naval bases. So if tensions rise tomorrow, China can use this Walvis Bay port as a military base for its navy. Here it can be stationed, and here's where it gets really interesting once again. If China activates both the Walvis Bay and Luanda ports in Angola as naval access points, then it will gain control over more than half of Africa's coastline. This will form a chain of bases starting from Djibouti in the northeast, passing through Tanzania and reaching the South Atlantic Ocean. And in this way, China will be in a position to encircle almost the entire African continent, not only in terms of trade but also militarily. As a result, China will be able to not only monitor sea traffic coming from Latin America, Southern Europe, and the Gulf of Guinea, but also interfere here if needed, without relying on the existing bases. So China is laying out a chessboard in Africa, with ports like Walvis Bay and Luanda being the pawns that very soon they are going to become ministers. So far, you have seen how China is strengthening its roots in Africa from Djibouti to Angola. But what is the real motive behind all this? Why is China establishing military bases so far from its borders? Why is it investing in ports, and why is it making military deals? There are three reasons for this. China's first objective is protection. In fact, through its Belt and Road Initiative, China has invested billions of dollars in Africa, mostly in roads, ports, railways, and power plants, mining, and telecom sectors. But now the issue is that Africa is a very politically volatile continent. There are unstable governments, corruption, civil unrest, and even the threat of terrorism here. That is why China is present here. Wants to secure its investments, and obviously it cannot rely on its bases in Asia for this. It needs bases on this continent from where it can immediately use its military power in case of any threat. The second reason is power projection. China does not just want to become wealthy, it wants everyone not only to fear but also to respect it. Just like the American Navy ruled the seas for years. From Japan to Italy, the control of the world's seas has been in the hands of the United States. Now China wants to do something similar. By building bases on Africa's eastern and western coastlines, it aims to control the two most important and largest oceans in the world, the Indian and Atlantic Oceans. With these bases, China's navy and submarines will be able to patrol here, and whenever needed, easily from the Persian Gulf to the coasts of South America, show their strength. Because now it's not just about regional dominance, but global reach. The third and final reason for China to build bases in Africa is competition. America already has several military bases in Africa, such as Camp Lemonnier in Djibouti. Similarly, here France and even Japan There are also bases. All these countries use these bases for anti-terrorism operations and monitoring sea traffic. So China thinks, why should I lag behind anyone? Why should only the West have control over Africa? In this way, by building these bases, China is sending a message to the world that we will no longer follow the rules made by others. China now doesn't just want a seat at the global table, but he now wants to create his own table. So, what we are witnessing is not just Africa's story. The map of world power is about to be redefined. For centuries, Europe and America have maintained complete control over Africa. But China is now gradually changing this map, and that too without firing any bullet or missile. With every new vote and every new agreement, China is laying the foundation of a new world order, an order where power is not just in Washington or Brussels, but also in Beijing. Will also be Africa is no longer just a hub of resources, but it is also becoming the battleground for the world superpowers. A few days ago, I made a video on another world power, Russia. Why did all the predictions of the West about it prove wrong? Do watch that video as well. See you in the next video with another interesting topic. Take care. Goodbye.